Good afternoon. We are on the 13th of June 2023. I'm going to be sharing a children's book, very old book, and it is by ENID BLYTON, and it cost originally £3.99. It is called Hurrah for Little Noddy, and pictures by BEEK. And there's lots of pictures in the book. Sadly, I won't be able to show you all of them, and it will take a long while to show you every page. And the book is quite fragile because it's very old. I'll tell you the contents before I begin. And it is Hurrah for Little Noddy by Enid Blyton. 1. House for One. 2. Noddy Goes to Work. 3. Another Job for Noddy. 4. Noddy is very brave. 5. A Night in the Toadstool House. 6. A Shop for Noddy. 7. Big Ears Comes Along. And 8. Off to Goblin Village. And 9. 3 cheers for little Noddy. I did a recording about the author, and that went up on YouTube yesterday. So this one will try and do all those stories. And if you want to know my name, if you're a little child, it's Nana Janet. So I'm going to read you all these stories, but I'm going to say a little prayer first, because I'm sure Noddy said his prayers. Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom his love commits me here, ever this day be at my side, to light and guard, to rule and guide. And I used to read these stories to my children, and my mummy maybe read me stories as well. I mean in Blyton. But the school that I went to, the nun said the English wasn't good and we shouldn't read them, but we still did. So this is the first one. House for One. Everyone had to line up and put one large brown penny into one of the policeman's helmets. It's a nice picture. Milko, Milko, shouted a voice from just outside Tubby Cottage. Mr. Tubby, the teddy bear there, lived there, and his fat little wife put her head out of the window. 2 bottles, please, she called. And oh, milkman, you'd better call at the house next door, the little new one called House for One. Mr. Noddy lives there, and he may want some milk. He's just come. That house wasn't there yesterday when I came round with the milk, said the little wooden milkman in surprise. Hurrah for little Noddy. No, it wasn't Mr. Noddy, only came yesterday, said Mrs. Tubby. He and Big Ears, the brownie, built it with toy bricks. It's nice, isn't it? I'll go and see if he wants any milk, said the milkman, and he went off with his little cart. Milko, Milko, he called just outside Noddy's window. The little nodding man was asleep, but he woke up with a jump and went to the door, his head nid-nodding madly. Good morning, he said. Yes, I would like some milk. 1 bottle? 2 bottles? Asked the wooden milkman. Noddy nodded hard. Well, say which you want, said the milkman. You nod for 1 bottle and you nod for 2. How am I to know what you want? 1 bottle, 2 bottles? Asked the wooden milkman. Oh, don't take any notice of my nodding head, said Noddy. I'm made like that. Look, my head is fixed on my neck and on a kind of spring, and if you tap me, I nod very hard indeed." "Do let me tap you then," said the milkman, and he tapped Noddy's head smartly. At once his head began to nod up and down very, very fast indeed. The milkman laughed. He gave Noddy a bottle of milk. "1 penny, please," he said. "Oh, goodness, I forgot. I haven't any money," said Noddy in dismay. "Well, you can pay me by letting me tap your head each morning till you've got some money," said the milkman with a grin. "I'd like that." Noddy went indoors with his milk. He had no furniture at all except for a chair that Mr. Tubby had lent him to sleep in. Dear, dear, he really must get a job and earn some money. Then he could buy a jug for his milk, a bed to sleep in at night, a carpet for the floor, and lots of other things too. Mrs. Tubby arrived with a boiled egg and some bread and butter on a plate. "You are a very kind Teddy indeed," said Noddy. "I would like to give you a hug, only my body is made of wood and I might hurt you. I do wish I knew how to get some work to do. Do you know anyone who wants a very willing workman, Mrs. Tubby?" "Well, you might go and try at 4 Chimney House," said Mrs. Tubby. "They're spring cleaning, you know. It's quite a big doll's house. If you can scrub and polish, I should think they'd pay you well." "I'll go this morning," said Noddy happily. "Isn't the house I built lovely, Mrs. Tubby? I do feel proud of it. I'm so pleased to be living in Toyland. People seem so nice here." "Oh, we're not all nice," said Mrs. Tubby. "You've got to be careful of 1 or 2 of the monkeys, and be sure you don't get in the way of the clockwork doll who goes head over heels. He gets in such a temper if you do." "I'll be very careful," said Noddy. "Now I'm off to look for work." 2. Noddy goes to work. The little nodding man put on his pointed hat, with the jingling bell at the top. He rubbed his shoes with a bit of paper, because he hadn't even a shoe brush. Then he set off to find 4 Chimney House. It was quite easy to find, because it was the only house with 4 chimneys. It was a very nice doll's house, with a garage at the side and a flower gate at the front. A little blue car was in the garage. Noddy went round to the back door. A small doll in a big white apron opened the door. She had curly golden hair and bright blue eyes. She looked at Noddy, and he bowed his head, nodding all the time. "What do you want?" she said. "Are you the laundry or the chimney sweep?" "No, I'm only Noddy," said Noddy. "I heard you were spring cleaning. I'm sure I would be good at that, because I've got plenty of spring in me, and I'm full of leaps and bounds." "That's nothing to do with spring cleaning," said the little doll. "We're cleaning the house because it's springtime, silly. Come in. I'll see if I can find something for you to do." The little doll thought for a moment. "The sweep hasn't come," she said. "I suppose you don't know how to sweep chimneys, do you?" "I'm sure I could sweep your 4 chimneys," said Noddy at once. "I'll try." So he was set to work to sweep the chimneys. He poked the brush up each chimney, and the little doll children ran outside so that they could tell him when the brush came out at the top. "You've done very well," said the golden-haired doll when he had swept all the chimneys. "Your face is very dirty now. Go and wash in the sink." So Noddy went to the kitchen sink and washed himself. Then he was set to work to scrub the big kitchen floor. He did it well, so well that everyone came to see how nice it was. "You're a very good worker," said the doll. "Now will you please carry some rubbish out to the bottom of the back garden for me and put it on the bonfire to burn? Can you make a bonfire?" "Oh yes," said Noddy. "I've never made one before, but I'd love to." Well, he was given all sorts of things to take down to the bonfire. He was given an old bed, a broken chair, a table whose top was cracked, and a carpet with holes in it. Noddy didn't put them on the bonfire. He stood and looked at them all lying in a heap where he had tipped them out of his barrow. "Why, I could mend that bed and sleep on it," he thought, "and that chair would just fit me, and that table would look so nice in my little house if I mended it and painted it, and that carpet just wants patching, and it would be so bright and cosy on my floor." He ran to ask the golden-haired doll if he could have the things for himself instead of burning them. "You see, I've a little house, but no furniture at all," he said. "Your rubbish would do nicely for me till I get some money to buy things." "Would you really like all that old stuff?" said the golden-haired doll in surprise. Noddy nodded like anything. "Oh yes, yes, it would be just right for me." So that night Noddy piled heaps and heaps of old things on his barrow and wheeled them to House for One. He called out to fat Mr. Tubby as he passed, "A bed to sleep in, a chair to sit on, a table to eat off, a carpet to walk on, a plate and a cup and a dish, an old knife and fork and spoon, a little crack wash basin. I'm the happiest fellow in the world, Mr. Tubby." Chapter 3. Another job for Noddy. Noddy spent a happy evening mending all the things he had been given. You should have seen how different his little house looked with a bit of furniture in it. Noddy lay down on the bed and table. He sat on the chair and he ate some supper off the table. He wished Big Ears the brownie were there to see him. He had paid some money for his work. He had been paid some money for his work that day. He bought his supper and his breakfast out of it, and the rest he put away to give Big Ears. "He lent me such a lot of money," thought Noddy, nodding his head as he remembered. "People must always pay back what they borrow. I will put some of my pennies into the drawer of the table. Then I can give them to Big Ears when he comes." For 3 days more Noddy worked hard at Four Chimney House. The golden-haired doll gave him such a lot of things she didn't want. She even gave him old curtains, and how nice his windows looked when he put them up. They were red curtains with stripes, and they looked very cheerful indeed. More money went into the kitchen drawer. Noddy began to feel quite rich. But after 3 days were up, The golden-haired doll didn't want him any more. "Our spring cleaning is finished," she said. "Why don't you go to the toy garage and ask if you can help to clean the cars there?" "What a good idea," said Noddy, and he went there to see if he could get a job. I've got a picture of the car. The garage had a toy petrol station and was really rather grand. Tiny cars drove up for petrol. Others came in for cleaning and polishing. The owner of the garage was a kindly-looking doll called Mr. Sparks. He looked at the little nodding man and liked him. "Yes, you can come and clean cars for me," he said. "My man is away. You can have his job till he comes back." I'll show you the pictures. Noddy set to work happily. He liked the bright little cars. They were all colours: red, blue, yellow, green and orange. "Oh, if only I had a car of my own," thought Noddy. "Wouldn't that be lovely? But I shall never be rich enough to own one. Look at this yellow one. Did you ever see such a little beauty?" He pressed the horn and it hooted pop, 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 pop. Mr. Sparks, the garage owner, almost jumped out of his skin. "Hey!" he shouted. "You're supposed to clean the cars, not hoot the horns. You get on with your work." "Sorry," said Noddy, and he set to work to clean and polish. Soon he could see his face in the bonnet of every single car. Mr. Sparks was very pleased. "Come tomorrow," he said, "and here's your pay. You're a good worker." More money, he thought. Noddy pleased as he hurried home that night. Half to put away for Big Ears and half to spend on myself. What shall I buy for my supper? I'll get a big jammy bun and a big ice cream. That will be a very nice supper. I'll sit in my own little chair and eat off my own little table. For a whole week, Noddy worked at the toy garage. Then the other man came back, and Mr. Sparks said he wouldn't need him any more. Noddy was very sad. "Oh dear, now I've got to get another job," he thought. "I must get one quickly too, or my money will all go." He went home thinking so hard about it that he left his little hat behind, the one with the bell on top. "Bother," he said, "I've forgotten my hat. I'll go and fetch it after I've had my supper." Chapter 4. Noddy is very brave. After he had had his supper that night, Noddy set off to fetch his cap from the garage. The moon was up and sailed in and out of the clouds, so that sometimes it was very dark and sometimes it was very light. He came to the garage just as the moon sailed out of the clouds, and he saw something that puzzled him very much. "The garage door is open," said Noddy, surprised. "Who's there at this time of night?" Then he heard a noise. "Well, someone's going to run a car out of the garage," thought Noddy. "In the middle of the night? Can it be a thief? Someone who has come to steal one of Mr. Sparks' cars?" He stood in the shadows and watched. Out came a car driven by a little goblin. Then another and another and another. Noddy was so surprised that he couldn't even shout. Why, it wasn't just one car that was being stolen, it was all of them. There goes the car belonging to the sailor doll, thought Noddy, as a little yellow car roared past. And there's the red one, belonging to the three Skittles. And there's the one belonging to the wobbly man. And my goodness, there's the grand one that's owned by Jumbo, the toy elephant. I'd know his anywhere. It's so big. It's pictures. Noddy suddenly knew he must do something about this. But what could he do? There were so many goblins, little people, one to each car, and all the cars were racing out of the garage as fast as they could go. Noddy remembered a little old car that stood in a shed nearby. He ran to see if it was there. Yes, it was. I'll get in it and drive after the thieves, thought Noddy bravely. I can't fight them, there are too many, but at least I can follow them and see where they go. He got into the funny little car. He started it. It ran noisily out of the old shed and down the pathway to the road. The last of the goblins' cars was just turning a corner in the distance. The moon was out at that moment, and Noddy could see quite well. Off he went. He'd never driven a car before, but he didn't mind. He knew how to steer, and although he wobbled a bit, he kept the car on the road. Off went Noddy. All through Toyland he went, and out into the country, far away. Ahead, all the other cars raced at 60 miles an hour. That was a lot in those days. And yelling at any rabbit that was in his way. He went quite a long way, and then something dreadful happened. A wheel came off his car. It was such a very old car, and one of the front wheels had always been loose. Now that the car was going at such a speed, off came the wheel. It rolled down the road, scared a peeping rabbit, and ran into a bush. The car spun round on its three wheels and crashed into a tree. Noddy flew right up in the air out of the car, the steering wheel still in his hands. He landed in the middle of a bush, but was very lucky for him. He lay there gasping, all his breath knocked out of him. Even his head stopped nodding. Then gradually it began to nod again, and he sat up. A small frightened voice called out to him, "What's happened? Who are you?" Noddy knew that voice. It was the voice of Big Ears, the brownie, his very best friend. Oh, what a bit of luck! Chapter 5. A Night in the Toadstool House. "Big Ears!" called Noddy. "Oh, Big Ears, it's me! Noddy, you know, I've had an accident." Big Ears, the brownie, came out into the moonlight looking scared. I'll show you a picture. "Noddy, I can't believe it. Were you driving a car? In the middle of the night too? You must be mad." "No, I'm not mad. I was chasing thieves," said Noddy, standing up and feeling himself all over to see if he was broken anywhere. "Are you hurt?" asked Big Ears anxiously. "No, I don't think so. I'm a bit chipped here," and Noddy rubbing one shoulder. "And is there a bit off my nose, Big Ears? Can you see?" "No, I don't think there is," said Big Ears. "Well, Noddy, it is nice to see you. Come to my toadstool house. You can sleep there tonight." Well, that was very nice. Big Ears' house was most exciting. It was a large toadstool with a door in the thick stalk and a tiny stairway going up to the head of the toadstool. There was a queer-shaped room there, very cosy indeed. "This is nice," said Noddy, his head nodding merrily once more. Big Ears, a whole lot of goblins went to Mr. Sparks' garage tonight and took every one of the cars there. I followed them as far as here. Then I lost them. "Oh, I know where they are," said Big Ears at once. "They've gone to Goblin Village. I'm sure goblins love cars, you know, but they always drive so fast that the police won't let them have any. So I suppose they've stolen those for themselves." "Well, I never. Then I can go back to Mr. Sparks' garage tomorrow and tell him where to look for the cars," said Noddy, delighted. "Won't he be pleased?" "Very," said Big Ears. "Look, here's a hot cup of cocoa and a biscuit. I'll make you a bed up for you in my big armchair, and you can stay with me tonight. We'll go peeping into Goblin Town tomorrow to see what we can find." They had their cups of cocoa and chocolate biscuit each. Then they climbed into bed and fell asleep. Noddy was very surprised in the morning to find himself in Big Ears' toadstool house, but he soon remembered everything that had happened. The two talked about it when they ate their breakfast. "You'd better not go to Goblin Village," Big Ears said to Noddy. "They would wonder why someone from Toyland was there. I'll go and peep round. They know me quite well." So while Noddy cleaned Big Ears' little toadstool house for him, Big Ears went to see what he could find in Goblin Village. All the goblins were very excited indeed. Took no notice of Big Ears. "My car's blue," said one. "Mine's yellow," said another. "I got Jumbo's big car," said a third. "Ooh, won't we have fun at nights racing round the woods?" "Where are the cars?" said a goblin boy. "I want to see them." "Well, you can just peep at them," said a goblin. "They're down that rabbit hole by the oak tree, all neatly garaged in a row." Well, well, that was all that Big Ears wanted to know. He shot off at once back to his toadstool house. "Noddy, come along. Back to Toy Town we'll go," he cried. "I know where all the cars are. We'll tell Mr. Sparks and the policeman. How pleased they'll be." He got out his little red bicycle. "Stand on the back," he told Noddy. "Are you ready?" Then off we go. Chapter 6. A shock for Noddy. Big Ears could pedal very fast indeed on his bicycle. His feet went up and down like lightning. He rang his bell loudly all the way. Everyone skipped out of his path. The rabbits ran, the mice scurried, the frogs hopped high. The old toad nearly got run down, but not quite. One poor worm got run over, but as he wriggled away quickly down his hole, Big Ears didn't think he could be hurt very much. As they got near Toy Town, Noddy felt rather afraid. "Big Ears," he said, "I feel scared." "Why?" asked the brownie in surprise. "Well, I took that car and smashed it up, you know," said Noddy. "What do you suppose Mr. Sparks will say to that? I shouldn't have taken the car, should I? And I certainly shouldn't have smashed it up. Oh, dear me." "Never mind. They'll get back all their cars because of you," said Big Ears. "I think you were very brave, Noddy." They rode into Toy Town. What a to-do there was! Mr. Sparks was in a terrible state. All his cars were gone. Yes, even the old one out of the shed. Jumbo was there waving his trunk about, very upset that his grand car had been stolen. Oh, the three Skittles were looking very angry. The wobbly man was wobbling too, and fro more than ever. He was so worried. See, they all are. There were crowds of excited toys all about the marketplace, talking about the stolen cars. Mr. Plod and the big toy policeman was there taking notes from Mr. Sparks. Mr. Sparks held up Noddy's little pointed hat with its jingling bell. "I found this," he added in a loud voice, "and we all know who this belongs to. It's Noddy's, the little nodding man." "What was his hat doing in the garage last night?" "He stole the cars," cried everyone, "and he dropped his hat by mistake. We must find Noddy." Big Ears jumped off his bicycle nearby at that moment, and the crowd saw Noddy behind him. "There he is, there he is," they cried. "Catch him, Mr. Plod, put him in prison." And before poor Noddy knew what was happening, the policeman had caught hold of him, and with Mr. Sparks on the other side, he was marched off to prison. "He stole the cars," cried everyone. "What a rogue he is!" Poor Noddy! He struggled and shouted, but it wasn't a bit of good. Mr. Sparks and the policeman wouldn't let him go. He looked round for Big Ears, but the little brownie was quite lost in the crowd. "I didn't steal the cars. I didn't, cried Noddy. "I came to tell you where they are." "Oh, you did you? Well, of course you know where they are, if you stole them," said Mr. Sparks. And before poor Noddy could say another word, he was shut up in the police station, in a horrid little cell, with only one barred window very high up. How sad he was! His head stopped nodding. He sat down and put it between his hands. "I'm in prison. I shall be sent right away from Toyland. I shall be punished, and I didn't do anything except go after the thieves," he groaned. At that moment he heard a tremendous hammering at the door of the police station. Bang, 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 blim, blam, bang. Then he heard a voice. "Let me in. I've got something to say. Let me in. I'm Big Ears, the brownie, and I want to tell you all about Noddy and how brave he's been. Let me in, I say." So we're on chapter 7. Big Ears comes along. Well, of course, the policeman had to let Big Ears in, or he would have broken down the door. "What's all this?" he said sternly. "Do you want to be put into prison too?" "You listen to me, Mr. Plod," said Big Ears fiercely. "Last night Noddy went back to find his cap because he'd left it in the garage." "Don't believe it," said Mr. Sparks, who was there. And he found the garage door open, and there were goblins inside, and they drove your cars out one by one, Mr. Sparks. Yes, they did. And Noddy was very brave. He got that old car out of the nearby shed and drove it full tilt after them. "Good gracious," said Mr. Sparks. "Is this true? Did he really?" "Yes, he did," went on Big Ears. "And what's more, we know where the cars are hidden." "Where? Tell me where," cried Mr. Sparks, and the policeman looked most excited. "I shan't tell you," said Big Ears. "You've been horrid and unkind to my friend Mr. Noddy. You've locked him up, that good, kind, brave Noddy, Tell us where the cars are, please do, begged Mr. Sparks. We'll set Mr. Noddy free, of course we will. No, I shan't tell you, said Big Ears, enjoying himself now. For one thing, poor Noddy had a dreadful accident with that old car. A wheel came off, and the car ran into a tree and broke into bits. I expect you'll be angry with him for that too, so I shan't tell you where your cars are. Oh, I'll forgive Noddy anything, said Mr. Sparks. I will, if only I can get the other cars back. That old car was no good. I don't mind it being broken to bits. Well, I think Noddy deserves a reward, not a punishment for the brave thing he did, said Big Ears. I shall tell him not to say a word about where all the cars are, unless you give him a fine reward. Well, I must say I think he deserves a reward, said the policeman. What do you think he would like? Well, said Big Ears, taking a big breath. Well, I think that as he saved everyone else's cars, he ought to at least have a little car of his own, even if it's a very, very, very little tiny one. Mr. Sparks looked at the policeman, and the policeman looked at Mr. Sparks. We shouldn't really have locked him up without hearing what he had to say, said the policeman. He must have been very brave to chase those tiresome goblins, said Mr. Sparks. He turned to Big Ears. Very well, I will give Noddy a little tiny car of his own in return for what he did. But now you must tell me where the goblins have hidden the cars. Ask Noddy, said Big Ears. So to Noddy's great surprise, his cell door was opened, and he was taken out very kindly by the policeman and given a big cup of hot coffee and an enormous slice of ginger cake. We beg your pardon for locking you up, said Mr. Plod, rather red in the face. We want to reward you for your bravery, said Mr. Sparks. Please tell us where the stolen cars are, brave Mr. Noddy. Well, the goblins hid them down the rabbit hole by the old oak tree in Goblin Village, said Noddy, his head beginning to nod again. I'll take you there. I don't really want any reward, though I'm dreadfully sorry for breaking up your old car, Mr. Sparks. Wait and see what your reward is to be before you say you don't want it, said Mr. Sparks with a smile. Chapter 8. Off to Goblin Village. Lots of exciting things happened after that. Mr. Plod called 6 other policemen, and they all got into a big bus with Mr. Sparks. Big Ears, the 3 Skittles, Jumbo the elephant, Mr. Wobbly, the sailor doll, 3 other toys whose cars had been stolen, and Noddy, of course. He was next to Jumbo, who squashed him dreadfully. But Noddy was so pleased at suddenly being a hero that he really didn't mind. He had his hat back on again too, and it was nice to hear his little bell jingling as his head nodded gaily up and down. They arrived in Goblin Village. Gobbo, the chief goblin, was called out to see the policeman. He was most alarmed. Take me to where you have hidden the stolen cars, commanded Mr. Plod. We haven't stolen any, said Gobbo sulkily. Then take me to the rabbit hole by the old oak tree, ordered Mr. Plod. All the listening goblins howled in fear then and ran away at top speed. Gobbo was a bit braver than the rest. He went with them to the rabbit hole, and there were all the cars. Just look, all parked nose to tail in a neat row, said Mr. Spark, amazed. Gobbo, who stole them? But Gobbo wouldn't tell. Very well, I shall fine every single person in Goblin Village 1 large round penny, said Mr. Plod firmly. That will teach them not to go stealing toy cars again. And everyone had to line up and put 1 large brown penny into one of the policeman's helmets. It was very heavy when the last goblin had thrown his penny in too. Then Jumbo got into his car, the 3 Skittles got into theirs, and the sailor got into his. Mr. Sparks got into his own best car. Mr. Wobbly wobbled his way into his, and soon all the cars had their right owners at the steering wheels. The policeman, Big Ears and Noddy, went home in the bus. Mr. Plod let Noddy drive the bus for a treat, and he was too excited for words. He drove very carefully indeed and felt very happy. I do like driving, he told Big Ears. It's a lovely feeling. I do wish I had a car of my own, my very own. But I shall never be rich enough to buy one, shall I, Big Ears? Never, said Big Ears, and smiled, a secret smile all to himself. What a pity, Noddy, what a pity. So I got a picture there of the policeman in the bus. And all the people look like they're having a party. So on the other page, chapter 9, 3 cheers for little Noddy. They all got back to Toy Town at last, and dear me, whilst they'd gone, the news had gone round the town about Noddy's cleverness in chasing the goblins and finding out where the stolen cars were. So what do you think? There was a big feast prepared in the marketplace for Noddy, Big Ears, and all their friends. My goodness, you should have seen the jellies shivering in their dishes, the plates of sandwiches, the great big chocolate cakes, the buns and biscuits. It was really a wonderful sight. Here's another picture of it. Is this for us? Said Noddy in surprise. Oh my, is this the reward Mr. Sparks said I could have? It's lovely. No, that isn't the reward you're going to have, said Mr. Sparks gruffly. Look, there's your reward over there, sitting by itself in the middle of the marketplace, Noddy. Noddy looked. He saw a car, a very little car, just big enough for 2 people. It was red and yellow, and it had an enormous blue bow tied to the steering wheel with a message written on a piece of paper. To Noddy. He got back our cars, so now he shall have one for himself. Noddy's head nodded so madly that his bell jingled all the time. He couldn't believe his eyes. Hurrah for little Noddy. Is it really for me? Really for me? He kept saying. Oh, I can't believe it. It can't be mine. Well, you come and join the feast, and afterwards you can drive your new car round and round the marketplace," said Mr. Sparks. "But we'll have the feast first, just in case you run into something and take your appetite away." So they all sat down to the feast, and it wasn't long before all the dishes were empty. Mr. Tubby the teddy bear called out for 3 cheers for Mr. Noddy, and goodness me, what a noise there was! And then came the happiest moment of Noddy's day. He got into his own little car. He pressed the hooter. Boop, 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 boop. It said proudly. "There's room for a friend," said Noddy, looking round. "Big Ears, where are you? Come with me on my very first drive in my very own car." Big Ears got in, and off they went at top speed round and round the marketplace. Boop, 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 boop. "It's the nicest car in the world," said Noddy. Hurrah for little Noddy, delighted. And oh, Big Ears, oh, I've got a wonderful idea. "What?" asked Big Ears. "I'll be a taxi driver," said Noddy happily. "I've got a car. I can take people wherever they want to go." "Oh, Big Ears, isn't that a fine idea? I've got my own job now. I drive my taxi." "It is a good idea, little nodding man, and if ever we come to visit Toy Town, we'll ride in your taxi. Are you going to have any more adventures?" "Yes, of course you are. We will read about them another day." That is the end of Noddy Book 2. All aboard for Toyland. Thank you for listening. We'll have some more Enid Blyton books one day. I've got some here that I haven't read, so maybe that'll inspire me to find them out of the basket over there. God bless. Thank you for listening. I'm sure one or two of you will. Even the adults like Deborah. I'm sure I'll see you. I might have to put that on YouTube, brand new YouTube. I've got a channel there I don't upload to, because it's not really Catholic Christian Enid Blyton, is it? And the nuns didn't like it. I'm not sure where I'm going to put this, but I have got another channel. I just don't upload to it anymore. I did it when I got banned. Banned for telling the truth when we were all supposed to be ill, and some were and still are. God bless. Bye bye, Noddy fans.